All right, hey everyone, welcome to Softcast. This is your host, Sergeant Major Matt Parrish. You know, if you're a regular Softcast listener, you hear us talk about partnerships quite a bit. It's one of the hallmarks of SOF, or Special Operations Forces. It's really part of our value proposition to the nation, is that we go and work with partners, not just during wartime, during all phases of combat and peacetime operations. Partnership is incredibly important to us. Every time we have a commanding general give their priorities, partnership is always one of them, and that's the case now with General Clark and his command priorities. Number 4 is to advance partnerships, and it's something we take very seriously. As you'll hear in this episode, we have partner nations liaison officers who come and work within our headquarters in the J3 International office. And so as part of Softcast, I think some of you remember during our first season, we had a New Zealand officer as one of our partners come on, and we really enjoyed that conversation. So it's something we wanted to do again, and we're lucky today to be joined by one of our J3 International liaison officers. As with some of our other guests, we're going to remain on just first names with Igor today so that he can remain semi-anonymous. But Igor, thanks for coming on, man. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to our conversation as well.
Yeah, so I will say first off, Igor is doing this unlike our friend from New Zealand who joined us, who English was his first language. You're going to be our first guest who has the bravery to come on a podcast in your second language. So don't worry about it. I promise you, we all respect the hell out of the fact that you're willing to do it. I know as an SF guy, you know, we speak multiple languages. Mine, I got the easy one. I got Spanish. And I know I would still struggle going on and doing a podcast in another language. So pretty awesome to be able to do it. So a quick rundown on Igor. Born and raised in the Czech Republic, member of the Czech Special Operations Forces. He spent the majority of his career in Czech SOF. And Czech Republic and Czech SOF are one of our primary allies, especially throughout Afghanistan, Operation Enduring Freedom, and throughout Iraq. We've had a lot of interplay in different places with Czech SOF. I know I was deployed at one point in 2006 with some of your brothers from Czech SOF, so really excited to have you on the podcast today. You know, we kind of talk to our folks. If you listened to our show before, you know, we always try to talk to guests about their sort of origin story. Why did they join the military? Why did they join SOF? I'm curious, coming from the Czech Republic, what was your call to service as you grew up?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would start with a piece of history.
Sure.
About the region, because in my opinion, it's very, very important to understand. So we were under communist control since 1948. It was Czechoslovakia back then, and in 1968, we had a short period of freedom. It was called the Prague Spring, but it ended up very fast when Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, and we waited till 1989 when we gained our freedom after the Velvet Revolution. 89, that was like a really important year for Czechoslovakia. Yeah. I just remember from that time that my parents had a discussion with me about like what I was allowed to speak about in public, because it was still a big thing. And it shaped me a lot. So when I was thinking about my education, and I was 14 years old, when I made the decision to attend the secondary military school, I made the decision because I was influenced by my brother and uncle. They both studied the military schools. And at that age, you know, at 14, you're young, right? Like, I didn't have any better idea at that time. It didn't seem as a bad idea.
Well, you get your role models there. You're looking up to your brother, looking up to your uncle. They're studying. You got kind of that lineage of service. So I can certainly see why that would be appealing.
Yeah. So at the secondary military school, everything was structured. I enjoyed that, and it was very interesting because at the beginning there were close to 200 students. And less than 1/3 graduated from that school. So it was like my first.
You're already going through selection.
Yeah, it was my first selection process.
I like it. Yeah.
And if you think about the time, late 90s, in 1999, we joined NATO alongside Poland. So it was a huge change. and our military went through transition. There were many reorganizations. So I didn't think about SOF at that point because Czech SOF didn't exist at that time. So after the secondary military school, I went to university. I like studying. My major was radio communication systems. So I was all about it. And, 9/11 happened, and we had that need to create SOF unit at that time. So the 601st Special Forces Group was created in 2003, and it was very challenging because that unit had roots, and it went back to 1950s, 1960s, when the main task of that unit was mass airborne operations. And from 1970s, they were focused on recon missions and diversions behind the enemy lines. So the basic was already there. But we accepted that NATO doctrine with the standard tasks, SR, Special Reconnaissance, DA, direct actions, and MA, military assistance. And in 2003, it was the beginning of the Czech SOF.
That's incredible. And I know you and I have talked, and I've seen some of the things since you've been here of some of the bravery and heroism and the lineage of the Czech military and the bravery and some of those things, similar to our Marine Raiders, to always kind of be able to bring forward that lineage from the past and showcase some of those same unit colors and unit heritage as you all stood up SOF in 2003.
So the whole name of the unit, it's the 601st Special Operations Forces Group, General Moravec. General František Moravec was the head of the intelligence services during World War II, and he was behind the assassination of Reinhard Heydrich, who was very powerful man in Nazi Germany. And the interesting fact is that General Moravec emigrated to the United States of America when communists took over, and he was a valuable advisor to the Pentagon.
Yeah, I saw that in some of the research and saw how they had brought that forward. I'm curious, because you touched on it, about 9/11 happening. So as the time, I'm just curious from your lens, as you were coming up and you were joining the military and then this happens, and it's before Czech SOF started, but you were still there, you were serving, you saw this happen. What was the lens of the Czech Republic around 9/11?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll start with me. Like when 9/11 occurred, I was on gate guard at secondary military school as senior. And, it was probably the same here. I couldn't believe what just happened at that time. And in Czech Republic, we wanted to be the part of Western world. So the perception was, oh my God, what's happening? How is this possible? How this was possible?
So they stand up the unit, Czech SOF 2003. At what point do you start thinking, hey, I'd like to go give this a shot and try out for special operations?
I was attending the University of Defense at that time, and it was the first time when that piece of information about the Czech SOF went public. And I was like, okay, maybe this is something what I should consider because it seems like right thing. But at that point, it was completely changed in my life because I didn't think about being in SOF community, and honestly I didn't believe that I would be right fit for SOF. But there was that feeling telling me you should try, and I did. I went for my selection when I was in the last year at university, and I failed. And you know what? When I failed, I found out that that's something what I really want to do.
It lit that fire, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it was a huge motivation. So I got prepared and I went through the selection process in the following year, which was 2006. And I passed and the qualification course followed.
I appreciate you being honest about it because I think it's awesome, right? We talk about failure a lot. Everybody looks at people, especially in special operations, and it's like, oh, yeah, these guys just float through life and whatever, and they're like 100 failures to get to success, right? And so I love that failure was what lit the fire, like, hey, now I really want to do this, because now I wasn't as prepared, or for whatever reason, hey, I didn't get selected. Now I'm going to put my all into it. Obviously, it's open source podcast. It's unclassified, but I'm just curious, as one special operator to another, what's Czech SOF selection like? What do you remember being really tough about selection and then sort of the follow-on qualification course?
So nowadays, there are different SOF units in Czech Republic.
Sure.
So there are different types of selection processes.
Yeah, you went the last hard one, though, right?
Correct.
Sure.
Correct. So as other SOF units, we are looking for people that are resilient, adaptable. That's a huge thing, like to be adaptable, and people who are trainable. Characteristics as decisiveness, initiative, like all, it's the same. Like it's the same. And the reason why I failed at that time, I didn't prepare. Yeah. I didn't know what was SOF about. I was kind of naive at that time, and I probably just went to try because I heard those voices. Don't do that. It's impossible. Sure. You will never make it. Yeah. I was like, okay, I probably will not make it, but I'm going to try.
Yeah. It's universal. There's something about being told that you can't that makes you want to give it a shot. And then especially after that failure, being able to then prepare. So you talked about sort of the traits that you're selecting for. All of that just through some paperwork, right? Nothing really physically demanding or anything, right? I'm sure there were some times that were a little bit crushing going through that. Talk to us about kind of some times where you felt like, okay, hey, maybe I'm still not going to make this. I'm sure the qualification course is no walk in the park either.
No. So honestly, the selection process was the easiest part. Yeah. I think it's the same everywhere. Yeah. The whole qualification course, you basically don't live your life. It sucks,
Sure.
The funny story is, like, I met one of my classmates. He was part of the crew, one of the helicopter that was about to deploy us. And he was like, oh man, what are you doing here? Like, he just tried to put my backpack to the helicopter, and he even couldn't lift it up, So it was really funny. Yeah. And you just go through that piece by piece and never give up.
As you're going through that qualification course, I know now there's multiple different units, but correct me if I'm wrong, I think when you went through, there really was only that 601st Special Forces group at the time, right? So you pretty much knew where you were going, unlike for us, like we're constantly wondering kind of through the qualification course, like, hey, what group am I going to get? What's my specialty and all those things. As you're getting ready to go, during that time, the 601st is starting to rotate into Afghanistan. Right, I remember, like I said earlier, I was in 06 in Oregon in a tiny little fire base where we had about 20-something Americans out in the middle of nowhere, and suddenly we got a word that this huge platoon of Czech SOF guys was going to come out. We didn't have anywhere to house them, so we started putting up tents and trying to figure out how we were going to do it. But it was an amazing opportunity to have those guys come out, and we started to be able to do missions together. And I joked with you, before. At the time, we had, God bless him, we had one American cook out there, and he was doing his best. And we were concerned because there was all these other guys that were coming in, like, how are we going to feed everybody? Ultimately, the Czech SOF guys brought a guy who was a phenomenal cook. And afterwards, we were super excited to have you guys on our fire base because our standard of living for cooking, we got 2 cooks instead of 1, and it was a lot better living. So I'm just curious, as you're going through the course, though, it's real now. There's a high probability you're going to go to combat. How is that worked into the qualification course, and how is that entering your mind as you're thinking, okay, when I graduate, we're going to war? Correct.
It was real, and it was main goal to train and to be deployed. It's like you don't want to train whole life and like just wait. And at that time when I did qualification course, we had instructors with that real experience from those deployments. So it was just great to train and follow instructions from these guys because they knew what they were talking about. And it wasn't easy, but we were getting ready basically for deployment. I knew that after the qualification course, there's gonna be just like short additional training, and I'll be deployed.
Yeah.
My first deployment was to the very
same
safe,
fire base.
same fire base. Yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully the barracks were to your liking because I built them in '06. But there's nothing like being out in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan and basically the only coalition forces for as far as you can see. Basically, wherever the light touches, that's your kingdom. There's nothing like it as a SOF guy. So it looks like you ultimately end up going to Orzgan in 2009. Was that your first opportunity to work together with U.S. and other coalition forces, especially in combat?
It was my first combat experience.
Yeah.
But I had other experience from training with other allies. First experience with allies was actually a training with French Foreign Legion.
Yeah.
I went through the jungle course in French Guiana, and there were a lot of allies. And one guy was from the Criff company, a US dude, like awesome guy. Yeah. So I met a lot of partners at that point, and basically my whole career was about partnerships. We were always involved in multilateral exercises and deployments.
So that French Foreign Legion Jungle School in French Guiana is pretty well known as a pretty rough course as well. There's some serious jungle. Being a 7th group guy and having been down in some of those same places, there's some serious jungle there. How did you feel coming from the Czech Republic, where I assume, although I have not been there, I assume not quite the same level of jungle as French Guiana? How does that feel going through? You got any good stories from going through French Foreign Legion Jungle School?
I have one story, and it's not about jungle environment itself. That environment's pretty intimidating. Yeah. You know, like everything's trying to kill you.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't matter if it's plant, animal, bug, everything's killing you. Yeah.
Yeah. But during the interrogation training, I managed to escape, and it was kind of funny because they were looking for me, and they used loudspeakers, and they were kindly asked me to come back. I just took my time because I knew that it would be painful experience, and it was. You can imagine what happened after that. So, yeah.
You weren't in a hurry to get back to French Foreign Legion interrogation during the jungle course? I can't imagine why, Igor. No, that's awesome. So we flash forward. We're back into 2009. You deploy into Afghanistan. Your first combat experience, you get into Orzgan. Talk me through that first combat rotation. Now you're a team leader in the 601st Special Operations Forces Group. Talk me through that combat rotation.
It was challenging. That deployment was under Operation Enduring Freedom, so it was bilateral deployment. Yeah. And that province, and at that year, it was about the presidential elections. Mm-hmm. So basically everybody who went around the base shot at us, and there were a lot of things ongoing. But that training and all preparation worked, and we were ready for the deployment. So we were confident, and we went through that deployment with very good results.
Orzgan was sort of before, in that 2009, that was before the village stability operations that came later in Operation Enduring Freedom, but it was very similar to that because it was such a small base. A lot of folks, when they think about their deployments to Afghanistan, they are a part of a camp in a much larger camp. That wasn't Anaconda. Anaconda was, you're ringing the walls as the SOF team because there is no one else. It's just you, and so when we were there, I know, as I said, towards the end of our trip, a bunch of your guys came over. But prior to that, we had maybe 20 Americans, and as far as the eye could see, out in the middle of the mountains. And so, when the enemy comes to attack that place, there's not a lot of places they can miss when they're shooting at that small fire base, for sure. So, as you're going through that deployment, I'm curious to your, we say partnerships from the American side. Everything always starts with an American face, and I'm curious from your perspective. Did you feel that partnership between your element and the U.S. team there? Did you feel like part of the team?
Yeah. It was an ODA from the 3rd Special Forces Group, and I feel integrated. Like,
Great.
We were completely integrated. We planned together. We conducted all missions together. It was like being on one team.
No, that's awesome. And I know you've had a chance to work with some, as you said, some allies, but also with some U.S. folks throughout your career. As you go into that next deployment and you start to move your way up, sort of the ladder into command and into detachment, and deputy command, talk me through that ascension in your Army. As you're coming up, how does it feel to start to move up within that, and what were your challenges as now you went from sort of being just kind of the new guy to now starting to lead those teams?
It's probably universal as well.
Yeah.
You join SOF and you want to be at the team level. It's the best.
Sure.
It's about responsibility and accepting responsibility and move forward and using your experience to build something, to pass your experience to other guys. And my next deployment was with 10th Special Forces Group, and it was different because we planned that at that time. So we had time to train together. So the whole deployment was different.
Yeah.
We were
So
we
10th
were
group came to you guys in the Czech Republic. You trained with that same team, and then both deployed together. That's awesome.
So we were able to synchronize all
That's really
processes and everything,
even
before we were deployed. And once we showed up in theater, we were ready to go.
Yeah.
That was a
awesome.
great experience.
During that pre-mission training there, as you're in the Czech Republic and you're training together, as you're exchanging ideas, I'm curious, and it doesn't have to be from that deployment, it can be from wherever, but if you could take one thing from what you've seen now all the way through your career, if you could take one thing from the U.S. way of doing things and bring it to your country, what would you do? What would you take?
That's a hard question.
I know, I threw you a curveball.
Because off the top of my head, I would answer, I would like to have your logistics system. It's like all assets and resources you have, that's amazing. But you're probably asking about...
No, that's exactly what I want. No,
yeah?
that's a great answer, because then I want to flip it. If you, from your experience working with us, if you could take one of the things from your unit and give it to us that we could do better, what would you do?
It's connected to the same thing, because we don't have those resources, or our resources are limited.
Yeah.
We are probably more flexible,
Sure.
and our skill set is broader.
Yeah.
And one guy can do multiple jobs. I know that you have the same. Like I'm not sure if it's clear what I'm saying.
You're not
Cook.
spoiled? Is that what you?
No,
That's what you really want to say, Igor?
No,
You're not spoiled.
No.
Sometimes you just got to make it work.
No,
it's okay.
No,
hey, these are the conversations we have when there's not microphones around. You know the deal.
Yeah,
it's all good. I like it.
No, I mean that you can have a guy who is a great cook.
Yeah,
he can
sure.
repair the car.
Yeah.
Like he is still an operator.
Yeah, and that's why I asked those questions, right? Because that's one of the things that, when I was going through our qualification course and even in selection, one of the first days of selection, you filled out all your biographical information, name and age and whatever else. And at the bottom, as part of your sort of snapshot of whether we should select you or not, it was like, what special skills do you have? Like, what do you bring that is added benefit outside of what we're going to train you as part of the Q course, right? So are you a mechanic? Did you grow up naturally being mechanically inclined? Are you a cook? Hey, did you grow up with a background where you learned how to hotwire cars? Whatever it is, those things, that's extra value that you bring to the team. And I think in some cases we do, in some units and in some places, become sort of just narrowly focused to, hey, well, this is my job. And there's somebody else who does that. As opposed to, like you said, there's sometimes in some places, I know for that Anaconda trip in 2006, we didn't get resupplied for over a month, right? There wasn't the ability. So I have sort of the same view of sometimes we can get spoiled when, you're on a big fire base. You're the supported effort, I guess I would say, right? When everyone's trying to help you do what you're doing, sometimes you don't have to flex those muscles of figuring out how to make it work. So I think that's a great critique. Absolutely. So as you continue up, altogether you had 5 deployments to Afghanistan, right? I'm curious to your lens as that war shifted from the beginning of, as I said, just sort of fire-based operations. We're just going out and hitting the enemy, and then it starts to move into what we called VSO, and there were so many different stages of that war. I'm curious to your personal thought process as the war matured across your 5 deployments, but also if you could speak on sort of the Czech view of this. We have our focus of like what the U.S. public's view of the war on Afghanistan and everything else. I guess overall, was your country supportive of the fact that you all were deploying and that you all were part of this coalition, or was there some friction there on should we be involved?
So the public opinion has shifted throughout the years.
As has ours, yeah.
Yeah, and it's linked to the whole military and like what we built since the early 90s.
Yeah.
Because we transitioned from conscript to voluntary system.
Yeah.
And the perception of having military, like in early 90s, it was that Soviet type of military.
Sure.
So the public opinion was like, this is completely useless. We don't need that.
Because it was conscript based, it wasn't.
Yes.
It wasn't a voluntary. Okay.
Yes,
yeah.
correct. But like the whole perception has changed, and especially when the numbers shrinked, we modernized, and Czech military was involved in humanitarian relief operations throughout Czech Republic. There were floods. Tornado.
Yeah.
So the public opinion on military itself was increasing. Deployments abroad, the same thing. There are more and more people who understand that we need to be internationally engaged.
Sure.
and follow our international interests. And the foreign deployments, it's a part of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Of course, each time when a Czech soldier died in Afghanistan,
Yeah, absolutely.
there was a huge discussion.
Rightly so. Yeah.
Why we are there? What's our goal? Is it our war? But we stayed till the very end as the part of coalition, and we were involved the whole campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to say something similar. The Czech Republic, throughout my time in service, has always been a stalwart ally, has always been. There was never a question. We knew the capability, as I said, as you guys were coming into our fire bases. We knew the capability, but we also knew that you guys were peers and all in, right? There was never, I won't name any allies, but sometimes there's allies that just send some people just to sort of say they're sending people, and I'm sure you saw that as well in some places. And then there's allies that are actually sending people who are engaged, who are part of the effort, and as you said, are part of the team, part of the coalition. And for me, I always saw that from the Czech Republic side 100%. You always had our respect and still do. Obviously, I said had because we're talking about Afghanistan, but 100%. And so I was just curious if the population view was similar, and it sounds like it is. You know, it ebbs and flows, obviously, as it should, right? I think there should be a healthy discussion on any sort of military action on whether we should be there and what's our end state, what's our goal. So then as you continue to move up in command, as the war shifts, you're elevating your position, you're becoming in greater and greater command. Talk to me about that last deployment as now a commander.
It was partnerships heavy. There were like more than 10 nations involved, so it was challenging to synchronize all effort, but we were proceeding with a very functional model, and it's kind of ironic that I'm talking about functional model after what happened, but that piece was really functional, and it was because it was a long-term project.
You're integrating all of these efforts from these 10 different nations and also trying to advise these partners. Talk me through how you used your other deployments and your lessons learned coming up to try to give that back to those folks?
Yeah, so all my experience was very valuable because I used all these interactions from my career, and I tried to apply them to deal with different nations, different cultures, because you have to get rid of micromanagement at that point and get the most out of people, because we have all different qualities, and if you are able to interact with people and get the most of them, it's the best for the organization and like for the purpose. So
Yeah,
it worked very well.
That is obviously universal as far as leadership goes. Leadership is a people business, right? And trying to figure out the skills and assets and weaknesses of everybody you've got is hard enough when you're in your own country with your own unit and trying to do that, but then doing that on an international scale where you've got 10 different nations all chipping in folks, it's got to be a decent challenge to try to figure out, like, okay, how do I make sure that we're getting this? So as you go through that 2020 to 2021 time frame, were there any stories that stick out to you of working together in that partnership?
There are a lot of funny stories, but we cannot speak about that in public.
Oh, come on.
And I would say that it really helped me to prepare for the assignment with J3-I, because in J3-I we have 28 countries all around the world, and everybody's different.
So there, as you finish up that command time, you get the nod, you get selected to come out here and be an exchange officer here in the J3 International. Over 20 countries working day in and day out here. We've got folks that have moved over here for several years to work within the SOCOM headquarters. In exchange, we send folks into those units to be special operations liaison officers or solos in multiple countries across the world, to really put our money where our mouth is as far as partnership. You can build some partnership from distance, but it's really about personal interaction. So talk to me about when you kind of get told, hey, I'm going to move to the States, I'm going to move to Tampa, what's my job? What's going through your head as you're thinking about moving over here?
A lot of things were going through my head.
Sure.
During my career, I was involved in all exercises and the majority of activities we did in CONUS. I attended JPME to join professional military education.
Yeah, how many times do you think roundabout you had been over here for one of those training operations prior to moving here?
It was a few times.
Sure, yeah.
But it was short visits, planning conferences and exercises itself. Yeah. It was about cooperation with Navy SEALs, 22nd Special Tactics Squadron. So I was involved in all those activities, and it was probably the reason why I was selected for this job, and because of my experience with international partners. It was intimidating to come to USSOCOM because SOCOM enterprise is huge, and all the processes, it's so complex if you come here, even if you are in the U.S. military.
I was going to say, even if you're from USSOF, trying to come here and trying to learn is intimidating. So, yeah.
So it's a lot of studying.
Yeah.
But J3-I is ready for this. J3-I was created in 2011. Yeah. It was a General McRaven who brought that idea to build a SOF global network. And obviously it went through your approval process, and it started with 2 nations in 2012, and it has grown up to 28 countries, which is amazing. Yeah,
Admiral McRaven was pivotal, really, in creating 2 of the big efforts that are still out there. One of them being J3-I and one of them being POTFF, right? Those are 2 of the things he said, hey, I'm going to get this global SOF network started, and we're going to take care of our people with a specific plan. And he broke some eggs to make that omelet on both of those, but they ended up enduring. And really 2 of the biggest sort of changes and shifts towards sort of the middle part of the global war on terrorism between those 2 organizations. So as you said, we've got a bunch of different countries, we've got a bunch of different folks thrown in over there. Everybody's trying to figure out how they work, and you're also coming over here during this whole COVID thing, so you don't get sort of the same person-to-person interaction. So it's got to be kind of hard to integrate. How have you found, and you can be honest, you can tell us we're terrible at it if you want to. How has it felt trying to come in and be part of the team as an international guy and also during this kind of weird time for everybody across the world?
I wouldn't say that you would fail, but that situation with COVID, it was challenging because a lot of stuff was online. And as you know, if you want to initiate something new just to reach somebody via email, it doesn't work like that. We all know that you need to have these in-person interactions. And J3-I itself, we came to the office soon after I arrived, so we were able to interact. And I felt really humble, and I learned something new every single day. It's a great environment to learn from each other, because like the main mission of J3-I is to work on interoperability. We just want our SOF units to be more interoperable, and that we can synchronize our processes and save resources and proceed to our goals.
Yeah, so as part of being in J3-I, one of the cool things that we have, especially coming out of COVID, is SOFIC. We've talked about that a little bit on the podcast. We just released an episode talking about the acquisition side of SOFIC and how we get new equipment. But one of the cool things about SOFIC is every 2 years at this industry conference here at Tampa, every other year we do an international SOF week where we pull in allies from across the world, and we have a capabilities demonstration, and we have opportunities where there's time for discussion, there's time for different conferences amongst our allies with the U.S. and allies. And so J3-I, ISOF is kind of a big deal as you've got all these different folks coming in. What are your thoughts on International SOF Week and the importance for the Czech Republic and for J3-I?
So there are two events during that week. It's SOFIC and ISOF Commanders Conference. Two separate events, and I would say that is the most important week for the USSOCOM and for J3-I, because all our commanders will be discussing the future and specific topics. So it's really important to have these in-person interaction. And the part of the SOFIC is the demonstration of capabilities. So a lot of nations will be involved in that. J3-I is involved as well. We worked hard to make this happen.
A pretty cool opportunity. If you've never heard of what we're talking about with this capabilities demonstration, if you go on YouTube, there's some videos basically right in the middle of downtown Tampa. We've got the river that comes through. We've got, as the bay comes up into Tampa, we bring out, we've got a military free fall jump into the water. We've got boats that come up and do a kind of a mock hostage rescue off of sort of a small cruise ship out in the water. We've got an assault that happens from boats, and there's a bunch of miniguns firing off blanks as all the helicopters are coming over. You've got the mayor who usually ends up getting taken hostage, and some of our folks, and it's an international group that are in kit that come up and do a raid on a small little hit there in downtown Tampa. It's just a cool opportunity for everybody that's here for that industry conference to kind of see us working together and kind of, hey, it's cool to have, sort of that, some mock explosions, some flashbangs, some guys jumping into the river and on into the bay. But it's also an opportunity for Tampa to see that, but also all the folks that are in for this industry conference. So really cool opportunity. So if you haven't ever seen that, go check it out on YouTube. And in 2 years, you can come see it live. But I know it's one of the things that J3-I is really involved in getting that together. And we talk about that capability demonstration, but it also gives all of the folks that are coming in, those different commanders, they're able to walk the floor during that industry conference and talk to some of those vendors and be able to do some of that business as well. As we look at, modernization is not just something for us. Everybody's going through, hey, what's the next weapon, or what's the next drone, what's the next technology that's out there. So we're excited to be able to host that every year when it's not COVID, but every 2 years with that International SOF Commanders Conference. What are your thoughts, or what are you looking forward to specifically for this year's SOFIC and ISOF?
So for sure, I'm excited about seeing new capabilities, all those tech companies that feels evolving so fast that there are always new fancy things.
Yeah.
We
New shiny objects.
Yeah, we like those. And I'm really excited about listening to all discussions at the commander's level and discussing the future.
Part of the reason that we're so into partnerships is because we want to, just like we do all this training prior, before we end up in a contingency operation or in a combat scenario, we want to have joint and multinational training together before we suddenly find ourselves in a place where bullets are flying and now suddenly we're trying to figure out, like, hey, wait, what kind of radios do they use? And wait, what's who are these guys? And so I think it's an opportunity. We've obviously been doing training together in all different countries for a long time, but we didn't have that plug-in at this level, where we didn't have really a strategic cooperation where we had these liaison officers. So I think it's been awesome, and it's cool for us here at the headquarters to be able to roll over there and not just get one international opinion on something, but you can get 28 international opinions on something if you're looking at, how do we roll this out, or what's the kind of thought process, and really to come over there and say, like, hey, how are you doing this in your country, and what's the opinion on this?
And the discussion and the planning process itself, it's imperative.
Yeah.
But you touch a few things. It's partnership itself and sharing capability. So from my point of view, it's crucial to define partnership, because partners should be used for mutual benefits. Yeah. And when that is lost, it's obvious, and you cannot save it just like by saying like everything's great. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. So it's a huge piece, and partnership should be about mutual respect and understanding. Yeah. We are all different, and we should understand that. And the second point is about sharing itself. It's a huge challenge because it's easier for everybody just to stamp the document secret no for.
Yeah.
You know what? Like nobody's gonna punish you for that.
Right.
But
yeah, we're all guilty of it because that's the easiest thing to check is just secret no foreign. But there's opportunities where then we don't get some of y'all's insight, and we're not able because we're over-classifying something. We're not saying that something that needs to be, for everybody listening, we're not saying something that needs to be no foreign for whatever reason. We're not saying we should underclassify it. But there's a lot of times where people just sort of rubber stamp like, oh, yeah, no foreign, whatever. And if we didn't do that, if we made it releasable, in some cases we might get another piece of the puzzle that we'll miss by not having that conversation.
Yeah, exactly, because the ideas or the basic of documents, they're mostly not like they're shareable.
It's not really anything that cool. Most of those documents
they are shareable. So
100%. Well, we talked about Admiral McRaven earlier because we were talking about this the conversation, and what you just said brings up one of my favorite quotes from him in SOCOM 2020, which I use a lot, is trust is our currency, and trust can't be surged. And so when we're talking about partnerships, to really have a true partnership, as you said, it's got to be built on mutual respect and trust. And that's not something that we can just hit the ground and say, okay, hey, you're a soft guy, I'm a soft guy, let's go do it. Those reps and that ability that we've exchanged across the careers, it's one of the reasons that we do regional orientation for Special Forces, right? Like you get a region, and that's the region that you continue to go back to because you build those relationships and you build that trust, so that as both of you move up the ranks, there's a trust where I can get you on WhatsApp and we can hash something out because we have that trust from going through schools together, going through training, and ultimately going to combat together. So when we think about things like, the 10th group team being able to come to the Czech Republic, you guys training together, I mean, how much more of a trusting and mutually respected relationship is that when you hit the ground and you've done pre-mission training together? I mean, that's a phenomenal sort of impact of partnership. I do want you to kind of hold our feet to the fire a little bit, just because I want to ask, is there anything else from your lens that we could do better on our side to make it more of a trusted relationship?
You can do something better, and it's already happening. Yeah. Like that perception of partnerships itself, it's something is on your mind. You talk about it a lot, but it's challenging to change mindset of people. And I think it's the way forward to build real partnerships and mean it.
I'm reading between the lines a little bit on what you said. We talk about it a lot. We've got to actually put it into action sometimes, and there's those little things, right? Including our partners throughout the entire planning process, and not just when we get to a certain point where we're like, oh yeah, hey, let's add some partners in here and let's go do one practice run and then we'll go hit it. And they're like, no, if you really want a partnership, we've got to do everything we can to make it fully integrated throughout the whole.
I would leave this without comment.
Sounds good. Sounds like I read between the lines correctly there. Well, Igor, one of the cool things I want to touch on, just because you and I are both on the team and because we're about to go on a trip together, is one of the cool things that we have here in this headquarters is we have a joint parachute demonstration team called the SOCOM Paracommandos, similar to sort of how the Army has the Golden Knights or the Navy has the Leapfrogs, except for, there's a couple different things about our parachute team. One, it's not a full-time team, so you and I both have real jobs, but we do this on kind of nights and weekends, the opportunity to go out and do some of these performances, jump into sporting events or air shows or those things, to be able to go out and give our public a snapshot of some of the things that SOF, some of the precision it takes to be a special operator, but also to thank them for their support. And one of the other cool things about our parachute teams is the only joint parachute team in the Department of Defense, meaning we've got members from not just one service, but we've got all of our services represented. The cool thing with you all now, and we've got a German on the team, and we just had an officer from the Netherlands who just left us, is now we have international on our team, which is incredible. When we go to an air show like you and I are about to go do this weekend, to be able to show that partnership, not just in, they work in J3-I and we go to training together and all these things. Like even in our parachute team, we've got you guys jumping in, and I know parachuting is something that you're incredibly skilled at. When did you get that bug of like, hey, I want to start doing sport parachuting? And kind of where did that start for you?
It was a few years ago. I was military free fall qualified.
Sure.
I did that at my work, but when I went all in, it was actually when I started working behind the desk. So I needed to find something that would keep me alive.
Yeah. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I started skydiving on weekends.
Yeah.
And I like that. So
how many jumps do you have now?
Over 1,100.
Yeah, and phenomenally skilled. As I've been on that team for a few years. You hit the ground running when you came here. We were like, okay, yeah, hey, a Czech officer wants to come be on the team. Like, hey, let's check him out. And immediately your skills just showed through. You've done crew, you've done all these things, and now one of our primary demonstrators for a lot of these missions. And as I said, for me being on the ground, having the microphone, it's awesome to be able to say, hey, we've got a joint team, but we've also got international officers. Talk me through, as you come over here, you said it's already daunting to come over to the U.S., you're doing all these other things. At what point are you like, yeah, actually I want to also skydive and travel around with these guys? What were your thought process when you were joining that team?
So I didn't know that kind of option existed.
Yeah, I didn't either when I got this job.
So I just transitioned all my Czech licenses to USPA licenses.
Yeah.
And I met people from the team at that point, because like all those guys, like they're amazing, and I'm really glad that I can be a part of the team. Yeah. They are most experienced demonstrators in terms of stadium jumps and other different skill set. So I was like, okay, this could work. I have free weekends. I can spend time during weekends doing this stuff. I'll be integrated. I'll meet personnel from SOCOM Enterprise, because sometimes it's challenging to get out of J3-I and meet people from other divisions. And you mentioned that it's joint team. So we have a Navy SEAL, Green Beret, multiple Green Berets, Raiders. We have people from USSOCOM. Like everybody's there, and I feel integrated because we spend a lot of time together, and it's not just about skydiving. I have to say that that those skills to perform with this team, it's completely different skill set I had. It was a lot of training. It might sound weird, but it was boring training, doing stackouts again, and be consistent. But like all experience and guys from the team that they work with me and they teach me, it was just awesome. You know, like I wish we had something like that in the Czech Republic, because the tool to put the word out, like we have this amazing enterprise and you can influence young generation, and it's really nice and impressive to see people coming and asking questions about military service, and I think that concept really works. And you can influence next generations in the US.
Yeah, when you think about skydiving, part of the fun of skydiving is going way up high, you know, going up to 12, 13,000 feet. Skydiving, being able to fly around, have some fun, and then, you know, you have a lot of fun before you ever open your parachute. And then, you know, for most skydivers, after you open your parachute, you just try to get down as fast as you can and just land so that you can go up and do the fun part again. Well, for us, because it's because it's about accuracy, a lot of times we're only going up to 4,000 or 5,000 feet, jumping out, immediately opening your parachute, which is, again, for civilian skydivers, the non-fun part, unless you're swooping, and trying to make sure that you can land in a very specific, very small spot. Because when we go out to some of these places like, you know, an air show where we have a very small landing in the middle of a crowd for a beach, for instance, or in the case of most of these sporting events, you're flying into a stadium and landing on the 50-yard line, and that's a big field when you're standing there like watching the game. But when you're a mile above the earth, you look down and that field is a postage stamp. So doing some of those, you know, boring, just doing drills, it's sort of like drawing your pistol or doing whatever else. You know, a lot of people join SOF and they think they're going to, you know, oh, when do I get to like the cool guy part? And it's like, no, just being really good at the basics is the cool guy part. Like really being phenomenal at those base level tasks is the accuracy and the precision that you need later on when you maybe need to take something a little bit more risky. So, and
it's not only about landing on precise points.
Yeah.
What was new was also land in precise time.
Yeah.
So because you have to land a few seconds after the national anthem.
Yeah.
So that's different type of skill set.
Absolutely.
And you're using smoke, flags on the flag line, which is challenging because there are so many malfunctions that we train for it, and always the risk mitigations in place.
Safety is our top priority, but you know we want to make sure that we're doing a good, safe jump 100%. The cool thing about it, too, I guess, you know, it's cool for us from the States to be able to travel around to different places in the States. But for you, coming from the outside, you even get to see more of the States. What's been your favorite event so far?
I have two of them, actually, and both happened here in Tampa. So first one was the crew jump for the opening of the MacDill Air Show. We linked two parachutes together, deployed a huge drop US flag, and the Red Bull airplane was circling around us. So that was a memorable experience.
Absolutely, and phenomenal pictures. We'll put some pictures up on for the video and for when we promo this. Phenomenal pictures of you guys linked up. You know, one guy's feet in the other guy's parachute lines, what we call crew or canopy relative work. It's where you link up in the air and then fly together, but you also have this massive drop flag. And at the same time, a stunt plane is circling around you with its smoke going on. It creates an amazing visual for those air show folks. What was the second one?
The second one was the jump for the 35th USSOCOM anniversary. And it's just because, you know, that I was allowed to do the jump. It was huge. The jump itself wasn't easy.
Yeah, it's tough.
And like, you know, like
you don't want to be the guy who eats it in front of the commander and the whole rest of the headquarters.
Yeah, everybody was there. Everybody from the community, and exactly. And we're always making fun of this. Like,
Sure.
I'll do that, and I don't feel any pressure. It's okay.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm glad of the skill that you and the other two guys have, because for anybody who hasn't been to SOCOM headquarters in Tampa, there's a tiny little patch of grass out in front of the place that is near our flagpole that we put 3 guys into. And as the guy who was narrating for that, I was writing some pretty big checks that I was glad you guys cashed, because I was talking about how you guys were going to set it down perfectly, and all 3 of you 100% did. But there's some guys who are afraid when they narrate to not say that because they don't want to jinx you guys and then you eat it. But I was confident you 3 were going to do it. And if you did eat it, I was going to have to break into some dad jokes or something to try to take the focus off of you. But you guys did a phenomenal job, and I think it was super cool for us. Even the commander, General Clark, mentioned it. How cool we talked about having internationals, but for that 35th anniversary, I think it was fitting, because one of the hallmarks of this command is partnership and all those things. So to have an international ally be our 3rd jumper on that, I thought was like perfectly fitting for the anniversary. So I'm glad that was as impactful to you as well.
And that's that comment about boring trainings, because it wasn't luck to perform like that. Like we trained for that a lot. Yeah. So everything was synchronized, and everything worked as we trained.
As good as we could get, as far as about 20 seconds in between each one of you guys, perfect touchdowns. You made us look good, so I certainly appreciate it. As we're closing up here, I really appreciate you coming in. It's a daunting task to be on a podcast, period, to do one in not your native tongue and have to think through some of these answers, and really also understanding that there's going to be other people from your country listening, and you don't want to say anything that you shouldn't say. So I know there's always sensitivities on some of those things, but I really appreciate your candid answers on a few of these things. And I think it's important for us. We always wear a very U.S.-centric hat, as we talked about earlier when we talk about partnerships. And it's like, oh, yeah, we have to have partnerships. Let's go plan completely unilaterally how we're going to have partnerships, and then we'll bring them in at the end. So I really appreciate you having this conversation. What have we not covered? What would you like to, in sort of closing comments, is there anything else you'd like to, let our listeners hear?
So the main topic was partnerships, and I think that we touched on the most of it, and the way forward is actually doing that. And I think that it's going to be beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot of those lessons over the course of the global war on terrorism, of the more and more we invested, and the more, like you said, early on, with having that 10th group team be able to come instead of just meeting them in country, like we see the dividends from it, right? We see how well it works when we're integrated, when we have J3-I, and we continue. I don't think, and I think I'm reading between the lines on this one too, but I don't think either one of us would say, hey, we're at like 100% on that, right? We're continuing to work it. We continue to get better on it. But I think it's these conversations that remind us that, hey, it is important to make sure that it's fully integrated and not just an add-on. And the more we do invest in it, the more we do see benefit on both sides from that partnership, because it should be a mutually beneficial partnership. It shouldn't only be a partner, a benefit to the U.S. It should be to all of our allies as well, that there should be some partnership beneficiaries.
Yeah, and it's important because we have different cultures, so we see things differently.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we are not reliable partners.
Yeah.
I would end up like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Igor, again, I can't thank you enough, brother. I know it's like I said, I know it's tough to think about coming in here and trying to do this, and I really appreciate you being willing. And as I mentioned earlier, man, personally, the Czech Republic SOF has always had my respect and continues, and I'm so happy to have you on the Pair Commandos and be able to go and do some of these things together. So I really appreciate you joining us today on Softcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us for another episode of Softcast. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Check us out at U.S. Special Operations Command. And please follow this podcast and rate it. Give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeart, anywhere you listen to the podcast. Please go down, write us a review, give us a 5-star rating so that way others can find it. If you have an idea about something you'd like to hear or somebody you'd like us to talk to, please send us an email, softcast@socom.mil. And so on behalf of all of us here at U.S. Special Operations Command, thanks for joining us for another episode of Softcast.